Hey, welcome to the Exit Teams podcast, where business owners and their advisors get real world insight on how to build a team of advisors, maximize value, and exit on their own terms. I'm your host, Bob Tankesley, author of Exit Teams, Build a Team of Advisors for Your Business Sale to Get a Higher Price. You can find that book on Amazon. Just start typing in Exit Teams, and it should be the first hit. And don't forget to check out our expanding content at exitteams.com. Whether you're years away from selling or thinking about an exit now, this episode, I assure you, is going to be packed with must-know tips to help you avoid costly mistakes. So let's dive in. Today, I'm joined by a true expert in the world of managed IT and cybersecurity, my good friend, Alan Adcock. Alan founded ASC Group in 1999, and he's a Georgia Tech graduate with a BS in International Affairs. Active in the Chamber of Commerce in Cobb County, Alan is a lifelong learner with multiples Microsoft and Citrix certifications. His IT career began at the young age of 17, where he progressed to being a senior systems engineer and a project manager. Before founding ASC Group, he served as VP of Information Technology for a major Atlanta real estate investment company, overseeing all aspects of its technology and planning and management. Alan is passionate. I've known him over the years to want to help businesses thrive and lead with technology. Alan, welcome to the show. This should be a great conversation. I mean, seriously, what business owner or advisor in our audience today doesn't have computers and
Yeah,
devices in their company? I mean, this is one of those universal topics that everyone can relate to.
yeah. Thanks for having me, Bob.
Yeah, you bet. Hey, let's jump in. Let's talk about strategic IT and operational impact. For many owners, IT isn't so much a growth lever until it becomes a real problem. How do you help owners see that IT is a strategic asset rather than just a cost center?
Yeah, so a lot of companies look at it as a cost center, and obviously it is expensive, right? I mean, that's a significant budget for every organization now is IT, and it has been for my whole career, really.
Yep.
Um, so IT deployed well becomes a big productivity plus. IT deployed poorly is obviously a drag on productivity and capabilities for the organization. A great recent example was 2020, COVID shut everything down. We all got to run home. Nobody can meet in your normal office, and so there's this mad rush to deploy remote connectivity or remote access technologies.
I remember those
So a
days.
lot of companies, yeah, we're ready to go, and it was not a big deal. But there were a whole bunch that this was a huge undertaking at that time to try to get that kind of technology deployed. And that's a great example of those strategic technologies to allow you to continue to operate in something that nobody really saw coming.
Yeah. I've noticed we're a lot more accepting these days of doing things remotely, doing things like this podcast we're recording right now. I could have a professional studio somewhere set up and have to invite you in and record that way with, a different setup arrangement. But we're doing it here because the tech is available and we're totally fine with that. I've noticed new clients, potential clients, everybody seems to be more accepting of this notion that, we don't have to physically be in the same room. And to your point, I think a lot of that came out of the COVID pandemic experience.
Yeah, it was a huge shift. People are just really accepting of this kind of meeting at this point. I'm sure you do a lot of meetings like this. We certainly do. We always like to go out on site, meet prospects in their
Yep.
environment, get eyes on how their stuff is laid out from an IT standpoint. That helps us to understand the organization. But after that kind of initial one, a lot of our follow-ups are done via Zoom, Teams, those kind of technologies.
Yeah. So even though the tech is implemented, there's got to be some operational drags that you see, the even decent sized mid-level market companies that could actually erode value ahead of a sale, because the first thing that comes to mind is the buyer is going to perceive, well, you could have set up your IT this way, but you didn't.
Oh,
What
there's tons of areas, Bob, where we see erosion of corporate value at that time. So one thing that we see frequently in companies that are getting ready to take the company to market is they stop investing in IT. They don't do those investments because they want to plus up the cash, plus up, make the numbers look good.
Yeah,
But then when it comes to somebody comes in and starts looking at that company and says, okay, I'm interested in this thing, and then they see everything is out of date, all the technology is potentially at end of life, and they're going to have this huge IT lift to get this organization up to speed. If they purchase it, it really becomes a negative for that organization.
yep,
We see that a lot. The risk management side of IT is often overlooked, and so when a buyer comes in and they start looking at an organization, what is the risk from an IT side of taking that on? Are they compliant with all the regulations that are now out there? And that's been a big shift, recently, in that every organization now has some kind of regulatory requirement. Even if it's not from a government organization, it's their cyber liability insurance carrier that is putting those requirements on that organization that they have to meet. In order to get insurance, they have to meet certain technology levels. And if you don't manage that risk correctly, it becomes a big liability for you and can reduce the value of that organization when it comes time to sell. It also
yep,
increases the risk that you have some kind of a cyber incident, which is even going to be worse when it comes time to sell if you've got that on your record that you've had that.
yep. So proactive managed services like you guys do, and I know you do real well, a proactive managed services approach can reduce unexpected downtimes in what different ways? We're talking about, threatening the performance of the business and ultimately buyer confidence. You come in, things are a mess, but if the business owner will just let you get your hands around their tech, how do you guys manage that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we go into an organization, the first thing we need to understand is, where does the data live?
Oh,
Oftentimes the organization themselves don't know anymore. It used to be very simple, right? It was a server on site that had all the data in it, and there was a mail server there, and everything was local. And today it's, how many different cloud accounts are there, right? This data is spread all over the internet and all these different buckets, and so we got to find it. Where is it? Where is the confidential data? Where's the stuff that's sensitive? Where's the stuff that if there is a breach of some kind, that's going to get you in trouble if it gets out there? So that's kind of step one, is figuring out where the data is, and then step two is figuring out what the processes look like. So how does this thing run? If it's a manufacturer, how does the production floor operate? What data does it need? And then we go to town on figuring that out and figuring out how to armor that so it doesn't just stop working one day. Oftentimes in manufacturing settings, we have a relatively new client. They are, if their production floor goes down, it's about a $10,000 an hour problem.
wow.
And it's all completely automated. Everything out there is computer controlled. We often go into manufacturing sites and everything is what we call a flat network. So there's one network, everything's connected to that same network. So all the devices on the production floor and the front office and accounting and sales, all that's on one network. So if you get, a salesperson that gets an infection on their machine and it spreads, you're now down, your whole production floor is offline. So obviously that's a huge no-no. We go in and start designing what that ideal environment looks like and separate those functions out, so a problem in one area doesn't spread to the rest.
Spillover. Say, speaking of viruses, kind of talking here about cybersecurity and business continuity. I know that I've heard that cyber risk is one of the biggest liabilities for buyers. What are the most common security blind spots that you guys find uh, if you're helping a buyer in due diligence or you're helping a seller get through due diligence?
Yeah, so we used to, disaster recovery used to be all about tornadoes and floods and fire and all those kind of things. And obviously,
Physical
those things could still
physical
happen.
threats. Yeah.
But now it's 99% cyber threats, right? So how do we gauge, protect all that environment? And a lot of owners believe that there is a silver bullet out there. And I've gone and I've bought McAfee antivirus and I've put it on my machines and I'm good, right? I don't need to do anything else. That is absolutely not going to work in today's world. It just doesn't do it. Our base security product package that we use has 9 different products in it. And then there's other stuff that gets grafted onto that for an organization to make sure that organization is secured. It is all monitored and managed 24/7 because the bad guys do not take days off. In fact, they look at the US calendar and say, hey, 4th of July is coming up. I bet a whole bunch of people are going to be out. Let's go and attack that network on Friday evening because nobody will see us until Tuesday at the earliest. So there's always a spike up around holidays and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, their mind is somewhere else. They're physically somewhere else during key times of the year. So this makes me think of how owners should balance investing in cybersecurity now versus waiting until they're closer to market. How should owners be handling that? You already mentioned that they start shutting down their IT purchases as a deal gets more imminent. But in this cybersecurity space, are you finding that they're paying more attention to it, or it too is an area that they're getting a little more slack in?
Yeah. So one thing that I mean, CEOs in general, they're obviously very, very busy, right? You got all these things you're trying to juggle, particularly as you get close to thinking about moving the company, getting, that exit. Um, there's so many things that are they're weighing on your time, and a lot of times they just don't know what good looks like, right? So that's one of the things that we run into is I don't know what good IT looks like. I have a guy who's been doing my IT for years. It seems like it works. It doesn't go belly
Yep.
up very often.
Hasn't blown up very badly.
Yeah, it hasn't blown up yet. So I think I'm good. Well, doing an assessment to try to figure out, hey, are we good or are we missing some key gaps is a very important part for organizations. Even if you are not looking to sell right now, you should still get a third party to come look at this and say, is this good, right? Particularly
Yep.
if you're a CEO and you just aren't that technical, which you shouldn't be, right? You got other stuff to worry about. Having somebody come in and do an assessment, figure out where those gaps might be, super important. And particularly as you get close to a sell, going in and doing that assessment and figuring that out can be really valuable. We were involved recently with a sell that was going on, and buyers came in to look at the environment, and we went through and pointed out, hey, here's some stuff that we found, and their accounting systems, part of their accounting systems were running on super antiquated systems that have been end of life for years. The software is end of life. Manufacturer doesn't support the software anymore. And it was a huge red flag. I mean, it caused a huge deal of how do we get this stuff out of this old system and migrate it? Because that's something that the buyer was not really planning on, right?
Yep.
Having to do this huge migration from an antiquated system that we got to go find somebody that knows something about it to be able to move it. So those kind of things are really important. Versus if you go in and the buyer comes into your organization and everything is squared away. You've got documentation. You've
Yep.
got your policies and procedures are good. A lot of organizations do not have great policies and procedures around IT. They just don't know what they need. So most organizations have, a little blurb in their acceptable use policy for their employees about IT kind of stuff, and that's probably it. But when we're working with folks that are in the M&A space, and they come in and look at a company, they're like, hey, where's your disaster recovery plan? Hey, where's your incident response plan? Hey, where's your cyber liability insurance policy? Are you
Yep.
meeting all this stuff? And oftentimes organizations just don't have that stuff, or it's a boilerplate piece of paper that they downloaded someplace and put in a buck, and it has no bearing on what the organization actually looks like.
I
So
will
those
I will
are
attest to
some
that.
key areas. Yeah.
Yep. Happens way too often. And I tell owners all the time, look, you may not ever sell your company, but when you do, when you decide to, wouldn't you rather stand out among all the other companies that this buyer is looking at? Because I assure you, they are looking at other companies. And all else being the same, if you've got standout tech stack, everything's integrated well, protected, it's updated, and the other company they're looking at does not, and to your point just now, it's antiquated platforms and tools and software packages. Which company do you think your buyer is gonna want? I also remind owners on a regular basis, if you're going to be selling to a sophisticated buyer at some point, private equity, strategics, family offices, they're going to have their own teams, and more they've got people that are experts in tech in your world, and as a buyer, they're coming in being quite critical. Wouldn't as an owner who might sell to them, wouldn't you want to get ahead of that?
Absolutely. Yeah. We sit on those calls frequently with those teams that you're talking about, where they are getting more and more detailed about what information they want. They want to see all these plans. They want to see all the documentation, all the policies, and a lot of organizations just can't produce it. It's not there, and it definitely can drag the valuation down if you don't have it.
Speaking of which, is it kind of like a seal of approval if a company has hired you guys and enough time has passed, and I always say, 2 to 3 years to get a company ready is probably
Yeah.
optimal. You've been in there, you've made some changes, they've allowed you to do what you've recommended. It's almost like you're presenting the company in better shape with like this seal of approval in the IT and the cybersecurity space. And that's a whole set of concerns that the buyer won't have when they're asked to cut that check.
Yeah, absolutely. So if an organization that we're supporting goes up for sale and they're trying to move that organization, we as IT professionals interface with their private equity groups, guys that are coming in to look at this, and we
Yep.
speak the same language. We know what questions they're going to ask, and we can address all that stuff. We can put together a package of risk mitigations and gap analysis and all the things that they may be asking about before they ask those questions. And it can go very smoothly if it's all in place and you have been in place for a couple of years, because there's not this potential that there's some kind of a breach, some kind of a hack that's maybe even ongoing, right? One of the most recent statistic I saw was that an organization, once they have a cyber incident, oftentimes it's hundreds of days before they even know it, which is a scary thought. Somebody's run around in your network for 200 days before they're detected. And if you're
Wow.
trusting McAfee to be your defense, that's absolutely possible.
That's astounding. And who knows, what havoc they're wreaking while they're in there and exploits that they're taking advantage of, weaknesses they're exploiting.
Yeah, it's all about the data, Bob. So if your organization, what kind of proprietary data do you have? People worry about things like ransomware, rightly so. But ransomware is usually the end of that cyber incident, right? So the bad guys will get into an organization, they'll put back doors in so they can maintain that what we call persistent access, and then they just start extracting data, right? They're going around mapping the network, looking for where that data lives, extracting that data out because it has value. And then once they're done and they think, okay, we've extracted all the data. And by the way, one of the keys that they do is they go look for how's this stuff backed up, right? So we're going to go kill the backups.
Yep.
And then once they're happy with all of that, then they launch the ransomware that goes and encrypts everything. And that's when you realize that you've got a really bad day, and potentially all of the data has also leaked out. So not only are you going to pay the ransom, you're also got all of the issues with that data breach and breach notifications and state law and federal law and all these different regulatory frameworks that come into effect at that point.
I should have asked this question up front, but I'll ask it now because I'm thinking about it. And that is, our audience filled with business owners of running companies of various sizes. No one should be thinking this can't happen to me. I'm too small, right?
Oh,
I'm,
absolutely.
I'm guessing the answer is correct to that. That everyone needs to be thinking about it.
Yeah, you're a target of opportunity, right? So depending upon what your adversary is what methodologies they use, they're not typically picking targets based on size or anything like that. Oftentimes, their shotgun approach is, we're going to send phishing schemes to 1 million people and see who falls for it, right? Everybody gets phishing attacks on a regular basis in your email. Some of them are very easy to spot, and people are getting better about doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But in the age of AI, the bad guys use AI too. So all of our tells that we used to use of English as a second language and it just doesn't read quite right, the bad guys just run all this stuff through AI now. And so it's like, now the tell is it too perfect? Right? Is it all written to a level that doesn't sound natural anymore? So you're not necessarily a target because of any type of your size or your industry or anything like that, although those do play a part. But you're just a target of opportunity. Oftentimes we see now infrastructure is being targeted. So, hey, you're a user of Google Workspace. You're a user of Microsoft 365.
Yep.
They're just broad-based attacks that are launched against those cloud platforms on a regular basis. So if you're using those, great, you should be, but you have to armor those as well, because those are the biggest area of increase in attacks is on those cloud services. And
Mm.
then, sometimes it's just a vulnerability in a piece of equipment that you use. Let's say you have a certain kind of firewall deployed at the edge of your network, and that there is a vulnerability that's announced in that piece of hardware. If you don't have someone watching that and patching that regularly, then somebody's going to be out there on the internet and they're just going to go and search the internet for all of that piece of hardware that they can find with that vulnerability and use that to get into you, not knowing what's behind it at all. Small, big, global corporation, they don't know. They just know, hey, I found this piece of hardware and I can exploit it with this piece of code. And then I'm going to see what's behind it and see if it's any value.
That's crazy. That To your point earlier, people think, oh, I've got McAfee, I've got some piece of software installed. It could come down to the device level where their weakness is.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Every ASE client has a firewall on the edge of that network. And that device has to be monitored on a regular basis. It has to be patched on a regular basis. It is a living, breathing thing. It's not a set it and forget it piece of technology.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, switching gears here a little bit to, kind of compliance and regulatory risk. I've noticed many buyers look closely at compliance frameworks like HIPAA, SOC
Mm-hmm.
2, ISO, others.
Yep.
Um, what are some of those compliance risks that often slip under the radar? They can't catch
So
everything.
Yeah. So as we said earlier, the insurance companies with your cyber liability insurance is something that almost all organizations have at this point, even if it's just a little rider on their normal policies. Everybody should have it because you don't know when you're going to become a victim of some kind of a cyber attack.
Hmm.
Um, but all of those policies have requirements in them, and oftentimes we find that the ownership of that organization who has paid for that don't understand what that policy requires of them. So we often, well, every time we get involved, we're asking for a copy of that policy, and then we're going to go through that thing and figure out what those requirements are and make sure that that organization is meeting those. The all those policies every year have an underwriting to them. That's usually a questionnaire of some kind that gets sent out by the insurance broker house, right, or the carrier themselves, and you have to
Yep.
fill this thing out. And as a business owner, it's just another thing on your to-do list that you don't have time for. And if you just sit down and say yes, 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 without really understanding what they're asking, you are opening yourself up for a huge amount of liability. Because if you do have a cyber incident, the first thing that's going to happen is when you tell your insurance company is they're going to send a digital forensics and incident response team out,
Ah,
and that group works for the insurance company. They don't work for you.
yeah.
So their job, they have two jobs. Job number one is to figure out what happened. And job number two is to figure out if you were meeting your requirements for your policy. And so they can determine whether or not they're going to pay on that policy. So it's really important to understand that and make sure that you are collecting the evidence that you are meeting those requirements. A huge problem is with ransomware is if your network gets ransomed up and you have no access to it, how do you prove that you are meeting those requirements? If you don't have a mechanism for collecting that evidence and storing it outside of your network,
Hmm.
you have a problem.
Do you find owners say, well, I've got cyber insurance. I know it. I signed up for it. I remember seeing it as a component of the policy, or maybe I even bought a separate policy that covers it. Is there kind of this wishful belief that, hey, I'm good. I
Yeah,
don't need
absolutely.
the proper
Absolutely.
tech.
I bought a
Yeah.
policy. I don't need to do anything else. If something bad happens, I'll just execute the policy and they'll pay
Yeah.
for all this stuff. I don't need to invest in cybersecurity. I don't need, we hear that a lot. And it's just a mindset thing, right? If you, you know, if you, where do you value that? Often companies that don't feel like they have a lot of proprietary information, we hear that more out of those companies that have a lot of records that are, PII is what we call it, personally identifiable information.
Yep.
Um, they understand better what those requirements are, right? They're
Yep.
more in tune with it. Companies, particularly like manufacturing, don't really think about that on a regular basis, but they've all got personnel records. They've all got things like that. We have some of our clients, their process is super proprietary, right? If their proprietary formulas for things that they manufacture get out, that's their bread and butter, right? Is there a factory someplace overseas that if they get those formulas that they're just going to
Yeah.
turn around and make a competing product and put you out of
I,
business?
I was just thinking
Huge,
that.
huge word.
Yeah. I'm sure there are some trends that you're seeing in the regulatory requirements that owners really need to start thinking about today. Because once you're in deal mode and that buyer's looking at you in due diligence, you can really slow things down if you haven't addressed this set of issues in the regulatory space.
Yeah, these things are really particularly if it's government mandated requirements.
Yep.
Those things like HIPAA, NIST is the body that creates those frameworks for a lot of this stuff. CIS is another one. There's tons of different ones out there. One of the big new ones is the there's a bunch of them, but CMMC for all of the government defense contractors is
Yep.
a big one. FTC safeguards in recent years has changed radically. So anybody who is involved in financial transactions has to comply with FTC safeguards now. So that's all of your CPAs, It's all of your folks. I mean, one area that people don't think about is all the car dealers now have to comply with FTC safeguards because they have a finance department and they're collecting all of that data, all that financial data about you when you apply for a car loan.
Yep.
So they all fall under FTC safeguards now, and FTC safeguards actually has teeth to it. You can go to jail as an owner if you have that data and it's not handled correctly and there's a breach. It's in there, which people don't think about. So it's spreading rapidly.
It's everywhere. It literally
It is.
is everywhere in every business model of every size.
Yeah, and the biggest thing in the last, say, 12 to 18 months, Bob, that we've seen is the growth, as there's a growth industry now of attorneys who are looking for these breaches, right? So when a breach occurs and you have to disclose that breach, which there are state laws and federal laws that require breach notifications. Everybody's gotten the postcard in the mail that says, hey, your data was exposed by XYZ company, and we're going to give you, identity monitoring for 12 months or whatever
Yep.
it is. Everybody's gotten those little cards. Well, there's attorneys now, they're looking for those. And those things are all public information. If you have a HIPAA breach, for instance, you go up on DHS's Wall of Shame, which is a website that the government publishes that has your big name on there and your firm and how many records you leaked and all this information. Well, these groups of attorneys now go and look at those things and they try to build a class action suit against you for that, just to compound your misery for having to deal with the government and everything else that you're having to deal with. Now you've got these attorneys building class action suits against you to go after you even more. So it's a growth industry in the law as well.
We just got a notice, my wife and I, of a breach at an online school that one of our kids briefly participated in. The
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a class action, very much like you said, and the notice stated the total amount of the award, 17 million or something. And I could just imagine there's a law firm behind this,
Yep.
and that law firm's going to get a pretty good chunk of what comes out of this.
Yeah, you'll get 12 months of identity monitoring. The law firm will get tens of millions of dollars. Yeah, that's how that works. You know
They're
that.
they're, they're highly motivated
Yes.
to get clients. So let's talk about some, kind of a core service of you guys. You do it real well, this kind of co-managed IT and
Sure.
dealing with the business's internal team and the dynamics that go on there. How do you position your firm ASC Group both as call it an augmenter and a partner to these internal teams? And I guess a follow-up would be why is this partnership so critical? Because as companies grow and scale, processes and procedures fall through the cracks and, oh, I thought you did this. No, we do that. But first thing, you're not coming in to, I'm guessing, to replace the company's internal team. You're there to partner with them.
Yeah. So, I mean, everybody's trying to be as efficient as possible in today's world, right? To make the most money and make the books look good.
Yep.
So you rarely see a company whose IT team internally is overstaffed, right? They are running as lean and mean as they possibly can to keep those costs down and be as efficient as possible. What often suffers, though, is tool sets. Security is always a huge one. We can come into an organization and augment those internal guys and gals, that internal staff with our team and really focus on areas where they might be weak. So it depends upon each engagement that we do is different, right?
Yeah.
So we have some organizations where they have a high level CIO type of person in place who just does not want to deal with day-to-day IT issues. We pull our guys in, we become their help desk. So we handle all those day-to-day issues for just managing that basic infrastructure stuff, which frees up their internal folks to manage strategic level types of decisions around IT, manage
Yep.
those budgets, manage, technology implementations that will move that group forward. Oftentimes organizations will have some kind of, EMR system in place, and their guys are better utilized managing that customization of the EMR system than if they're just trying to manage desktop support, server support, that kind of thing.
Yep.
So we can partner with them that way. Other organizations that are growing, they may have a really good internal person or team that manages those base level infrastructure pieces. And we come in and we put our cybersecurity stack on top. We put our tool set in there where their staff gets access to our tools so they become more efficient and more effective by seeing the exact same data that we see. They can escalate those issues up to us using the same tools that we use. And then we can sit on those board level types of meetings with them using our virtual chief security officer services and be that voice in the room that's telling them about the regulatory requirements, telling them about all these higher level things that their internal staff is just not up to the task on. So it just depends upon what that engagement looks like and what they have in place. Our job is not to come in and replace all that. It's to figure out where you have gaps and how can we help you to get more efficient and handle IT better.
Yeah. No, I love it. That flexible service model, meet them where they are and build the service you provide around that. So there's got to be some differences, no matter what level of service or how many services you're in there providing. There's got to be a difference between a business that has a co-managed IT environment versus those that don't. What are some of those standout? Go ahead and shock the audience. What do you?
I mean, it's if you're a small IT shop or even a one-man IT guy in a growing business, it can be overwhelming, right? I mean, you've got your plate full. I did that, early in my career. I was employee about number 31 at a firm. I was the only IT guy on the staff.
Wow.
I could go to the ownership and say, hey, we need this. And they're like, what is it? Right? They don't know. They don't know.
Yeah.
Do you really need this or do you not need this? So, being able to come in to somebody that's in that seat and say, hey, we can help you figure out what you need and then present it to leadership so that you can get a budget to do this and explain why you need it. Oftentimes in our industry, we just get overwhelmed by the facts and figures and the speeds and all that kind of stuff. And management doesn't care about that stuff, right? They want it to work and they want it to work well, but they don't need all the little details they don't care about. So how do we present it? How do we help you to get the budget you need for stuff that's really critical, cybersecurity in particular, right? Trying to stay up to date on cyber stuff is a full-time job that internal IT staffs that are small have a really hard time keeping up with. And then if you're growing quickly, that just compounds it, right? You're adding staff at one point. I said I was employee number 31. When I left, we had 400 and something employees. It was massive. So, Monday morning was, going down and giving an IT presentation to all the new hires that started that day. And it's a room full. So trying to keep up with all that is a full-time job. And if you don't have a big enough staff, obviously your IT staff is probably not growing as fast as the rest of your staff because we're always kind of lagging there. It can be really hard to keep up with. And another area we come into, big projects, right? Hey,
Yeah.
we build servers and infrastructure stuff every day. An small internal team may only redo their infrastructure once every 3 to 5 years. Things change in our industry. We're in IT, right? That's what we do. Everything changes all the time. So those are times that we get involved in those kind of projects. We have a large customer of ours moving right now. So we've been having tons of meetings with them and their executive staff about what that infrastructure and the new facility is going to look like. They have offices all over Atlanta that they're trying to consolidate into one giant office. That network is obviously going to look very different than what the little networks in the other buildings look like now.
Yeah.
So we're trying to get that infrastructure put in correctly from the jump, working with both their internal IT people and their executive leadership to make sure that those investments are done right, and they're not wasting money on stuff they don't need, and putting in the stuff that they really do need from a security standpoint, and making sure it all works together.
Yep. Yep. When you were talking about rapidly growing firm, I had a flashback to my time as an intern at a very rapidly growing accounting practice in the early 90s. And they had one IT guy, the IT guy. And every
Yep.
time, without fail, I would go back to his office because I needed to every day or two. Every time I went back there was a new stack of towers. There was a new server. There was, a new printer, a new whatever, hardware was used in an environment like that back then. And the stacks just kept getting larger. I had a flashback of all this internal IT work that needed to be done by just one person.
Absolutely, absolutely. You're making me have flashbacks now. Maybe a little PTSD coming. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that and if you're an internal IT, right, you're helping people, right? We're a people organization. Our job is to help people, and it just happens to be that we're helping them to implement technology and to use technology to get their job done. And during the office day, you're constantly bombarded with people who need your help to
Yep.
fix whatever it is right now. All that infrastructure stuff just sits while you're helping other people get their stuff done. And so oftentimes, as a small IT shop, that's what Saturday and Sunday is for. Then you're in there working when the rest of the users aren't, so you can get some
Yep.
stuff done, right? We spent a lot of weekends doing stuff like that.
I've had this running joke. I tell everybody I've been self-employed for 26 years. What do you call Saturday and Sunday when you work for yourself?
I don't
It's
know. What is it?
two more work days until Monday.
There you go. There you go.
So if a company doesn't have a roadmap, like a long-term roadmap to manage the IT they've got in place, the IT they're going to need in the future, what are some of those pitfalls that owners can make when they're prioritizing their tech investments if they don't have this roadmap? You start grabbing this and grabbing that and patching stuff together, and who's looking after it? You are. No, I thought you were.
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, we often we call it IT by Best Buy, right? You just go down and get whatever router is on sale at Best Buy, whatever laptop is on sale at Best Buy, and you just bring it back and plug it in, or you hire somebody and tell them, hey, just go to the store and pick up whatever you want, and you just
Yeah.
this massive hodgepodge of stuff, right? And you just hope it all works
Hope
together.
it all connects. Yeah.
Yeah, hope it all works together, and then you just have uh, you know death by a million cuts, right? All the time there's some goofy thing that's not working quite right because there's no standardization.
Yep.
There's no standard hardware, there's no standard configuration. Every machine is running different versions of stuff on it. And when we walk into those environments, it's like, all right, here's what we got to do.
Yeah.
We got to start putting some standards in
Stop.
place.
Okay. Time out. Stop. No more purchases. Just let us assess what you've got. No more
Absolutely. Yeah.
no more
And
runs to
another
Best
thing,
Buy.
yeah, another thing, Bob, that brings the organization doesn't have a good feel for what they actually spend on IT, right? They don't
Yep.
really know because there's not like a set budget. There's nobody that runs that budget. People are just expensing stuff that they think they need. So you really don't even oftentimes know what that IT expend is.
Yep.
When we tell them, hey, this is what it's going to cost, we're like, that's crazy. That's so much money. And they're like, well, how much you spending now? And they don't really answer. And
Yep.
then we start uncovering stuff and find out, hey, you've been paying for these internet circuits you haven't used, for the last 3 years. And they're like, So,
couldn't this also extend to they're buying too many services, they're subscribing to too many tools, the wrong tools. Couldn't this also go
oh,
over to the software
ab-
side?
absolutely. Yeah. If there's no central licensing of stuff, then that we find that all the time. Somebody purchased, a bunch of licenses for software for them, and everything now is subscription model, right? It's not,
Yep.
we don't go buy Microsoft Word in a box and load it on a machine. It's all subscription models. And if that stuff's not centralized, you find that you've got all these licenses you're paying for, and they're the wrong licenses, and they're not being used by anybody, because they're all in these different buckets.
Yeah.
One place where we see that right now as an epidemic almost is in AI. So for some reason, people have decided that AI is not an IT thing. It's just something we're just going to go get and do on our own. So in our industry, what we call when somebody just goes off and kind of goes and does their own IT inside of an organization on their expense account, we call it shadow IT, right?
Yeah.
So it's this IT spend and IT configuration that's outside the purview of your IT department or your provider. So, we see it. People go buy hardware that they think they need and don't tell anybody, and they configure it wrong. We've seen it where people have said, well, the Wi-Fi down here on my end of the building isn't great. So they just went to the store and down to Best Buy and bought a router and plugged it into their desk to make the Wi-Fi better. Well, now
No,
you've got a
no
road.
security vulnerabilities whatsoever with that. Come on.
What could go wrong, Bob, right? What could go wrong? Uh, so we see that kind of stuff, but as traditional shadow IT, but now it's AI, right? So everybody's going and saying, oh, it's only $20 a month. I'm going to go get me a Chat GPT license
Yep.
and just put it on my expense thing, on my corporate credit card, and I'm just going to start using Chat GPT. Okay, great. Well, did you put any governance on that thing? Did you set the security controls in Chat GPT at all? Did you buy the right license for Chat GPT? Are you training the model with your proprietary data? There's all kinds of issues that are coming
Yep.
up with this, and then trying to bring that back and put central control around it is really challenging. We did a survey in an organization that's very focused on AI implementation, and we did a survey of them and said, okay, well, what platform do you need? And they came back with 13 different AI tools that they absolutely had to have for everybody in the organization. It's like, okay, that's a lot, but if you absolutely have to have them, let's see what this is going to
I
look
didn't
like.
know there were that
So,
many. Wow.
oh, there are hundreds of AI tools, hundreds. Um, it's kind of mind-boggling, and there's going to be, it's early in AI, right? So there's
Yeah.
all these different flavors. Everybody's trying to capture some market share. There will be a mass consolidation at some point, but it's not there yet. We're seeing some consolidation at this point, but there are literally hundreds of different tools, and so when we look at
And
that,
you're
we say,
seeing
okay,
and you're seeing some major companies drop tools like OpenAI as we sit here at the beginning of second quarter 2026. OpenAI just dropped Sora, a video creation tool. That I never thought that would have happened.
yeah, it's there. There was a tool that's gone through different names, Clawbot, then Motbot, and then it became really popular. There was this run on Mac Mini computers because people were all buying them to run this little AI model on. And so they sold out of Mac Minis across the country because everybody's buying them to run this thing on there. And it very rapidly got gobbled up by OpenAI. So now it's OpenClaw, and it's run underneath the OpenAI umbrella at this point. So there's some consolidation going on, but we started off telling organizations, hey, let's choose a model that you're going to standardize on, and we need to buy the Teams license for that, because that's where the security controls are. If you buy
At a global level.
yeah, so most of these tools, there's a free version, which we all know if the product is free, then you're the product.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
everything you do in the free version is completely used to train the models. So we don't want to do that anywhere. We want to turn that off. Then people go buy just the individual license, which gets them basically just gets them priority in the queue for their requests. It doesn't
Yep.
really do a lot for security. There are options in there usually to turn off training of the models, but there's not a lot more than some basic rudimentary security. It's really when you get to that team level or that enterprise license that you get some good security tools around it. And you can set those security settings at the top layer and then distribute the license to the staff. And that gets you a better solution. But what we're into is organizations like our folks we were talking about a minute ago, they don't want one model. They want all of them.
Yeah.
So we've gone out and had to kind of readjust to that. And we have tools now that we are deploying that have a very secure base. Everything inside that is done in that portal is locked down. There is no training of models by contract. It can't get out. And it gives you an option of choosing one of 58 different models. So you can run your queries, and if you don't like what ChatGPT says, you just reach up, change the model, and see what Claude says. And that's been pretty successful. A lot of organizations like that. There are also people don't really think about all the connectors that have to go into AI to make it really a lot more valuable than just a thing that you chat back and forth with. You want this thing to be able to connect out to different data sets. Yep. So when you're looking at like ChatGPT 5.4, which is the latest one as of what we're talking about right now, it'll probably be a new one tomorrow, but that training of that model has an end date on it. So whenever that was released is when that model stopped being trained. Anything that happened after that, it does no knowledge of unless you have a connector that allows it to go out and search the web or search a database for more recent information. So those connectors become very important. And from a productivity standpoint, people are beginning to want these things to all connect to everything. So, it's a little terrifying to say, okay, I want this AI model to be able to connect to my email and read all of my email that I have saved up for the last, 27 years. That's scary. And you got to have security controls around that in order for it to be useful.
I don't like to often drop company names on the show here, but wasn't there a problem? Somebody in Samsung recently put something proprietary, something that never should have hit the free version of chat.
So Samsung is one of the key horror stories for early AI adoption, right? So their engineers, everybody knows Samsung, right? They're a technology leader, manufacturer, everything from television sets to your cell phones. Their engineers were having issues with something in the code. So they uploaded all of the source code for the Samsung phones into an AI model and started asking it to help them to figure out this problem with the code. Wow. Great. Okay. Where the failure came in is that data was put into the public model. It was totally trained on all of that proprietary data. And once it's out there, there's not a way to get it back. It's out. So the Samsung then had the knee-jerk reaction at Samsung was, this is really bad. We are going to ban the use of AI for the entire organization. No AI anywhere, period. So now, not only did you put your proprietary code out there, now you're going to potentially be on the lagging everybody else because you now are not using these new technologies anywhere. So AI has a lot of potential to be a productivity booster for organizations, even small organizations, right? It doesn't have to be a megacorp.
Yep.
Your small office can really benefit from AI automations, but you got to do it right, or it's a breach issue, right? So, companies are the regulatory bodies are catching up. NIST has a brand new, AI security framework that they've just released. So all this stuff that we talked about earlier in this conversation about regulatory requirements is coming to AI very soon. So we're going to see, frameworks put in place of how do you use AI, how do you make sure the data doesn't get lost, and that kind of thing, because that's happening all over the place. If you're a business owner and you think your staff is not using AI, chances are you're wrong and that they are using AI. And if you don't have a corporate policy around it and some corporate governance around it, they're probably using the free models and they're
Yep.
probably not telling you. So part of one of the things we do on our assessments now, Bob, is we go in there and we run a scanner on that network and we can tell what models are being used where in that
Hmm.
environment. And it's educational, to say the least.
Yep.
Because management will say, no, we don't have anything we're doing. But then staff is like, yeah, we are.
Yeah, we are. Yep. We just
Yeah,
didn't
we
tell
are.
you.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a big area for us right now is putting that government or governance, regulatory stuff, compliance stuff in place for AI usage, central control the licenses, understand what you're spending on AI, make sure it's locked down, and then once we know what the spend is, are we getting anything out of that? Is there value coming from it? Or are we just spinning our wheels and
Right.
buying a glorified search engine? Or are we actually using this thing to generate value for the organization? So that's the next step: is how do we make sure that we're actually getting a return on that IT spend in AI?
I'm sure you guys would much rather be brought in ahead of time, ahead of major purchases, investments, implementations, rather than after the fact and cleaning up messes.
I mean, ideally, but we live in the real
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
It is what it is, right? So,
So
so
when IT is done wrong, I mean, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but it can actually lower company value and create risk when when the owner, someday seller, doesn't expect it. The buyer may find it, and increasingly, I think they are. So there's got to be some call them misconceptions that they're laboring under. Have you noticed like one or two big things that, hey, we really should have gotten our hands around this in terms of IT, and we didn't, and now we're paying the price for it?
yeah, well, AI is the biggest one right now, right? Everybody is in
Yep.
this mad rush to be an AI forward company. Very few people know how to do it efficiently and actually get value out of it. So
Yeah.
I saw a study the other day. 99% of organizations said that they had disclosed proprietary data to an AI model, which is almost everyone. The 1% probably just doesn't know it.
They just didn't want
Um,
to admit it.
and and then the same study, 94% of organizations said they're struggling to document the return on investment for their AI spend. So those are not good numbers at this point. The blogosphere is out there. Half the people, it seems like, are saying if you don't, and if you don't adopt AI right now, in 6 months you're going to be out of business.
Yep.
I don't think that is true at all. But I do think organizations need to start thinking about it and figuring out how can we implement these tools to make us more efficient.
Yeah.
Um, we had an example of an organization we were talking to the other day, and they have to go out and survey a user base of a large number of individuals and ask them a set of questions and document that. So their methodology for this was they were going to hire 5 temps to call all of these people
I
and
think I know
ask
where
them
you're
the
going.
survey questions. So I was like, all right, well, that's one way to do it. What if we could build a bot that those people call into a phone number and the AI bot asks them the questions and collects the results, the answers, and then puts that into the document for you. Big savings, easy to document ROI on that. Those are the kind of low hanging fruit things that organizations should be looking for right now.
Yeah, and you guys are about to help me with some of my stuff with AI. Really looking forward to that. Hey, as we round third here and start heading home, if an owner had just, 3 steps to take this quarter to call it harden their tech and their operational foundation before a future exit, what do you think those would be?
Well, the first thing, if I was a business owner and I was unsure about what my situation was from an IT perspective, have a third party come in and do an assessment, right? Get somebody, a third party, to look at it and say, here are the gaps. Here's the stuff that's good. Here's the stuff that's not so good. And then you can figure out where to make investments to shore that thing up, right?
Yeah.
We do that all the time. There's other companies that do it. Obviously, you can do it from a security only standpoint of, hey, where are the holes in my security, or just an operational, including security. Look at operations and say, okay, here's stuff that's running great. Here's stuff that's not. The next area would be documentation.
Yep.
What is the documentation stack for your organization? Can your IT guys produce it? We had a organization that we started helping here in the recently, last 12 months. Their lone IT guy up and quit, just straight up quit, walked out the door. He's done. Where's the documentation? Did not exist. There is
Or it was
none. It's all in
whatever,
his head.
whatever. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Really tough place for a business owner to be. It's really expensive to hire somebody like us to come in if you have no documentation, because we're effectively having to go in and crack into every system they have and reset it all back to defaults and rebuild it because there is no documentation about how it's set up. So documentation, if you're a business owner and you want to have a little more control of your environment, just ask for your internal IT team to do a documentation review with you once a quarter, a couple of times a year, to see what they produce, if there is any documentation. There are automated platforms now. We use them for all of our clients, right? So if one of our clients says, hey, I want you to give me all of the passwords to all the stuff and all the documentation that you manage for us, we just go in and hit a button, export that thing out, send them a secured method to encryptedly get to that, because you don't want to email something like that, because that's all the keys of the kingdom.
Sure.
And we can provide that at any time. Can your IT team internally provide you that kind of data on how everything is set up to give you a little peace of mind that you are not completely beholden to the one guy that can walk out of the building and take all the secrets with him, right?
Yeah.
So that would be an easy, relatively easy thing to do for you and your internal team.
Documentation, boy, that comes up with almost every guest I have on the show. No matter what the subject area, the topic,
No,
everyone.
nobody likes it, Bob. I mean,
Yeah.
right? I mean, nobody gets into IT so they can write documentation. I guarantee you.
Yeah.
I'm sure most other disciplines are the same way. But hey, here's another great use case for AI, is to help those folks write the documentation and find where the gaps are in that documentation
Yes.
by using AI to help you out with those frameworks.
Yes. Wow. That's great insight. Here's a segment that the audience seems to like, what we call rapid fire takeaways. All right. So get ready.
Uh-oh.
The biggest tech risk that you see owners underestimating.
Oh, it's all cybersecurity
Okay.
for sure.
One KPI, key performance indicator, that every owner should monitor that technology often hides.
Oof. So monitoring stuff like productivity is tough. If you some kind of a KPI around productivity lost by poor IT, be it equipment, be it response times from internal IT departments, things like that. How much are you losing because your IT is not up to snuff?
Yep. I would agree with that. I was thinking that as you were saying it, actually. All right. Lastly, a technology investment that owners regret not making earlier. And if your
Um,
response includes something about AI, then that would be a probably probably a good response, I'm sure.
yeah. So right now,
Or
everybody's talking about
AI, I should say AI done properly.
AI done properly is the key there. But I would go back to disaster recovery planning, right? If your team has a great disaster recovery plan and you practice that plan, we call those tabletop exercises. You're going to sleep a lot better at night because you've gone through some of those tabletop exercises and actually walked through the disaster recovery plan
Hmm.
before an incident happens.
Okay. That's good stuff. Alan, this has been awesome. This has been good one. Like I said at the outset, what advisor listening to this podcast or watching it, who doesn't have tech and who doesn't have tech that needs to be managed well? It's a universal topic. Appreciate your time. Where can folks hear more about you or get in touch with you?
Yeah, the easiest thing is just go to our website, right? www.ascgrp.com. And all of our information is there. They can reach out to us from there, and we'd love to talk to them.
Excellent. Excellent. Really, thanks for your time, man. This has been a good one. Well, that's a wrap for today's episode of the Exit Teams podcast. A big thank you to my guest, Alan Adcock, for sharing his experiences and his expertise and his insights. So if you run a company and it's got tech in it, and that should frankly be everybody watching or listening, I suggest you reach out to Alan and his team, see how they can help. Hey, if you're a business owner thinking about your next chapter, now is the time to start building your advisory team. You can learn more in my book, Exit Teams. Build a team of advisors for your business sale to get a higher price. Available on Amazon. And don't forget to visit exitteams.com for free resources, tools, and a master class that can help you prepare for a successful exit. Until then, build your team, sell smart, and take control of your future.